This is Joe Gentili from Left Tail Risk Advisors. So in this video, I want to go through some of the basics on trust-owned life insurance, some of the reasons why people do this, what some of the drawbacks are, how it's funded. So we're going to focus on the most common way that people use trusts to own life insurance, although there's a few others. So the most common way is through a trust that's called an ILIT. An ILIT is an irrevocable life insurance trust. And so what that is you, the grantor, you set up the trust. You have a trustee that administers it. The trust is now in the trustee's control and outside of your control. The trustee is not going to use the trust proceeds for your benefit. And then you have the beneficiaries of the trust. The whole reason for doing this, for setting this up, for most people, it's to deal with the potential estate taxes upon death. They want to avoid having the life insurance proceeds taxed. So if, let's just say that you are subject to an estate tax, whether it's a federal estate tax or a state level estate tax, if you own that life insurance policy in your own name, then the death benefit is going to be included in your estate and it's going to be taxed along with the other things that are in your estate. So, in order to avoid that, you can move the life insurance policy or have the life insurance policy in an irrevocable trust that's no longer in your, so now it's outside of your estate, and the death benefit proceeds will not be subject to estate taxes, which obviously increases the pool of money that's available by a lot. People want to have that. They also want to have the added benefit of the additional creditor protection. Life insurance on its own, at least in a lot of states, has some very strong creditor protection, both to the cash value and the death benefit. So this is already a favored asset in that respect. But if you really want to add on the creditor protection, the best way to do it is to not own the asset and you have that in the trust. So you get the estate tax exclusion, you get the creditor protection, and you also get control as to creating the initial trust terms as to how the proceeds are going to be distributed out of this policy. So you have a lot of control with that. So you get the control as to how it's distributed upon death. You get the creditor protection and you get the estate tax exclusion. So those are the main advantages and the reasons why people set up ILITs, irrevocable life insurance trusts. The drawbacks for doing that to be aware of is that, as it says in the name, it's irrevocable. So once you set this up and you have the life insurance policy in the trust, you can't undo it and take the money back to use it for yourself or for whatever reason that you want. So before you do this, you really have to make sure that this is something that you want, knowing that you can't undo it once it's done. So the irrevocable nature of this, I would consider this a drawback, although it's the irrevocable nature that also gives the benefits. The other things is there's administrative costs and there's creation costs for this. So if you're going to own a life insurance policy in a trust, obviously you have to have a trust set up. You're going to need to have an attorney set up that trust. And every year there's going to have to be administration for that trust. There's going to be a trustee that's responsible for funding the trust or funding the premiums of the life insurance policy to evaluate whether the purpose of the trust makes sense, whether the policy is still appropriate. So there's ongoing administrative costs for having an ILIT. So again, you're going to want to make sure that the benefits that you're getting out of it outweigh the administrative costs that go along with it. Okay, so now you've decided that you want the ILIT, you want the benefit of having that life insurance policy sit outside of your estate, and there's a profile of person that usually wants this. It's a person that is high net worth to ultra high net worth. They're going to be a well-off person. They're probably going to have a lot of illiquid assets that would be in their estate. That could be a closely held business. It could be real estate. It could be an art collection. They're going to want a reason for having a large amount of liquidity outside of their estate to cover costs once they pass. And the primary cost is usually these state taxes that we had mentioned. So having that pool of liquidity from the life insurance death benefit allows them to pay the estate taxes, or at least pay a portion of the estate taxes without having to liquidate those illiquid assets in a fire sale. So they're able to keep the family business intact, not sell real estate in a rush or art in a rush, which could lead to selling at discounted prices. That pool of liquidity in the ILIT could also equalize inheritances. So again, if somebody has an illiquid estate, let's say they own a closely held business, one child works in the business and is going to inherit it day to day, another child is outside of the business, that larger pool of liquidity, that death benefit that's not getting estate taxed, that can be used to equalize the inheritance where one child gets the business and the other child gets the life insurance proceeds, which equal the value of the business. So those are the typical people that would want this in their life. So now we'll move on as to how to set it up. So you have the trust and you have the life insurance. Those are the two main components of this. In an ideal world, you're going to have the trust set up first, and the trust is going to purchase the life insurance. That is the cleanest, simplest way to do this. The next two examples of how to do it are less ideal, and I'll explain why. You could have a life insurance policy that already exists on the grantor, and the grantor gifts it to the ILIT. That creates a potential problem because there's a look back rule associated with that. So if you gift the money to you gift the life insurance policy to the trust and you happen to pass away within 3 years of that happening, the proceeds from the life insurance policy can get clawed back into your estate. So that's a risk you'd rather not take. Uh, some people, in trying to avoid that risk, instead of having the grantor gift the policy to the ILIT, they'll have the ILIT purchase the policy from the grantor. That's a possibility, but it's a complex one. The purchase has to occur at fair market value or fair value for the life insurance policy. You don't want to trigger something called a transfer for value, the transfer for value rule, which could have some serious tax consequences. So if you're going to go down that road, that is absolutely not a do-it-yourself project and something you want to do with the appropriate professionals guiding you. And then there's the question as to how do you fund this policy on an ongoing basis. So let's assume that the life insurance policy has annual premiums that are due. And how do you fund that? So ideally, you're going to want to fund the premium as much as possible using your annual gift exclusion. So individuals have annual gift exclusions. I think currently they're around $16,000 or $17,000, somewhere in that ballpark per person. And you can't just simply gift that money to the trust because it's not considered a gift to a person. So in order for it to be a gift to a person and get the benefit of that exclusion, there's something called crummy powers, which have to be given. And this is how you're able to do that. So crummy doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean crummy in that sense. It's named after a court case that established the framework for this. And what it is in order for it to be considered a gift, the beneficiary of the gift, beneficiaries of the ILIT, they have to have the ability, at least for a period of time, to access and use that money however they see fit. So what you hope happens and what you're planning for is that the money is gifted to the trust to pay for the premiums. The beneficiaries are notified that that has happened and they have a period of time to withdraw that money and use it for their own purpose. In order for this to work and for the life insurance policy to stay in force, they have to not exercise that right and allow that money to be used to pay the life insurance premium. But that's the process through crummy rights and crummy powers that you're able to gift that money. And that's important. It's also worth noting that that creates an administrative cost as well, because you need somebody to administer that. Somebody has to be monitoring that. They have to be issuing the notices, paying the premium. So there's some responsibilities for the trustee in that regard. So in sum, those are the basic things that you need to know about an ILIT. It can be a very, very useful tool for the right scenario where a person is trying to fund an estate plan where the estate plan may incur some estate taxes, and this is a great way to create a large pool of liquidity, a large pool of cash to deal with potentially estate taxes or to deal with inheritance equalization. So fantastic tool for people, but it does have some downsides and costs, primarily the irrevocable nature of it and the administrative costs that are created by using this structure as opposed to owning the life insurance in your own name. So as always, I hope this video was useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at any time, and I hope you subscribe if you found this useful. Thank you.